Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Sip and Smoke podcast with myself and Billy. How are you doing, Billy?
I'm doing well, Lewis. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. We've got some great cigars and a wonderful guest.
We have, yeah. I mean, the guest change, it's usually something that we do, and we always kind of focus on the cigar side of things. And we've had a few comments over the past few months that we kind of forget a little bit about the whiskey. So we thought we'd bring a guest to you who knows literally everything there is to know about whiskey. And hopefully we will learn something alongside you guys as well. So we have Raluca from our store in Liverpool. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for inviting me, guys. Hopefully we can share some knowledge with the world.
Of course, yeah.
I'm definitely not an expert. I mean, I would say I know more than the average person, but there's always room for improvement.
Of course. It's like that with everything, though. I mean, Mitchell says he's learning every day. I mean, he allocates one day a week to reading, just cigar books over and over. So everybody is learning all the time. So
it's something that the guys that watch him probably hear us say all the time, that every day is a learning day, and in this industry that is absolutely bang on. Like everything that you think you've learned everything until you come into the office and someone knows a little bit more about you. So yeah, it's an exciting thing to be a part of. And as I say, hopefully today we'll learn a little bit about the whiskey side of things.
Of course, yeah. Like you said, we kind of neglect the sip. I mean, it's a sip and smoke podcast, and we kind of just do more of the smoke and not the sip as much. So today we're really
sip.
Yeah, exactly. we're changing it around.
So yeah, we're going to be focusing more so on that today. But before we do that, should we talk about the cigars that are in the subscription box this month?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'll let you go first. Which cigar have you got? I mean, that one it's a phenomenal stick, and I'm jealous that I'm missing out on that one today.
Yeah, you did look at it earlier and think, why didn't I choose that one? So I have the 1/4 Oliva Auction Selection Serie V Toro. This is a 6-inch with a 50 ring gauge. This is Nicaraguan binder filler with a Mexican San Andres wrapper. This is fantastic. We last had this on, was it the Virtual Hearth that we did?
No, we did an event with it. I can't remember whether it was around the midpoint of last year when they first came around. But yeah, it's a cigar that you definitely enjoy for sure.
Memorable, definitely. Yeah. And auction selection as well.
Great price point, isn't it?
Yeah, and this, Serie V never normally do a Maduro either. It's normally just their standard
collaborations.
Wrapper. Exactly.
So that says something on its own.
For sure.
Yeah, fantastic. But what about yourselves? I believe you're sampling the same cigar today, aren't you?
We are.
Yeah. So me and Raluca are sampling a relatively new cigar to the UK market. It's quite a long name, so forgive me if I stutter. But this is the J.C. Newman Cigar Company Diamond Crown Maduro Robusto number 5. I couldn't remember if it was 4 or 5, so just had to double check.
Any of the numbers.
This one comes in at 4.5 inches long with a ring gauge of 54. The wrapper is a Connecticut broadleaf, which I think is becoming way more popular now.
100%.
Especially obviously a brand that we really know and love in Foundation. They use it quite a lot. But yeah, that in case is a Nicaraguan binder and filler. So Nicaraguan tobacco should have a nice punchy flavor profile, and I'm really looking forward to sampling it.
Nice. We noticed as well when you pull them out of humidor, they have a very different size.
Yeah.
Obviously, as it's now a lot more sunny these days, well, it's summer, isn't it? So now you've got the Toro, and you stay outside for longer and enjoy smoke for a lot longer.
I mean,
but you've also got a short format cigar.
Yeah, I mean, you say it's summer, but in the UK, we're never guaranteed sun in the summer.
It's been pretty good so far, though, hasn't it?
Yeah. I feel like everything seems to be leveling out a little bit.
But
2 weeks of summer.
Yeah, 2 weeks of summer. I was going to say, as soon as it hits July, it's downhill.
Rain pours back in.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, with the humidity today, I mean, I could do with a little bit of rain, I think. But
yeah,
it's a bit stuffy in here. So if you can see us all sweating, it's just down to the humidity in this room. But yeah, as I say, enough about all of that stuff. I think
it smells amazing, by the way. The cigar.
Does it?
Yeah, it has a nice sweetness.
Yes, it does. I'll let you nose it if you like. Just don't put your nose right on it.
It's quite light.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not very robust on the nose, but it's as I say, a cigar that as soon as it came in, I was like, I definitely need to get my hands on one and give it a go. As I say, the people at home know that I love a Maduro cigar or a dark wrapper, and Connecticut broadleaf is right up there now. So really looking forward to that. Yeah. But as I say, enough about that. And over to you, Raluca. What is your position in the company? Obviously, the guys may not know specifically who you are and what you're involved in. A little bit of a clue. It's obviously whiskey, but yeah. What is your overall position, things like that?
Sorry.
So I put you on the spot just as you're lighting the cigar. Have you got a lighter?
No, I'll just use one of those ones after.
I'm the store manager for Liverpool for our retail. And I'm also the spirit specialist within the company. So yeah, that's what I do.
Nice. As I say, it's a good job because, as I say, we're going to try and hopefully learn a lot from you. So yeah. Well, I think the best place to start is probably the overall process, right? I mean,
100%, yeah.
Whiskey, similarly to cigars and similarly to things like coffee and things like that, there's a lot behind the scenes that people don't necessarily get to see.
Yeah.
Obviously, if people have been lucky enough to do distillery trips and understand what's going on, then great. But I think it's best to hear from you, Raluca. Sort of, can you talk us a little bit through the process and how it is made, sort of from grain to bottle?
Of course. So obviously, the process is going to be different from distillery to distillery and from country to country. But Scotch whiskey wise, we'll start with 3 ingredients. One of them would be a grain, which in this case is barley. Mm-hmm. The other one would be obviously water.
Right.
And the third one is yeast, which is going to be the one doing all the magic by converting the sugars into alcohol.
I was going to say, because it's the yeast that they say eats up the sugar, right? And then kind of digests it how we kind of digest food and things, and then kind of releases the alcohol content, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's quite interesting. You don't really think, I mean, when people think yeast, I always think it's bread and things like that. You never really think it's quite an important factor of whiskey.
Mm-hmm. It's actually a fungi, so it's basically from the same family as mushrooms. And the way it's used in the industry is just very similar to what brewers would do to make beer. Okay. But yeah, I think starting with the beginning, I would say if you don't consider bottling a step, there will be 5 steps into the whiskey making process. Mm-hmm. The first one is mashing. Then you've got the first one is malting. Then you've got the mashing, fermentation, distillation, and maturation. And then obviously bottling, but I wouldn't say it's much of a process. I mean, it involves something, that's for sure, but...
I mean, it's got to end up in a bottle somewhere along the line, so I suppose that step's kind of a given, right? But so the first process is malting. Could you tell us a little bit more about sort of the process behind that and how that kind of comes about, how you do that?
Of course. So I would say we shouldn't really forget the importance of the prime ingredients we spoke about earlier, which is why the character of the water, what sort of location it comes from, the minerals it passes through, the type of barley used. All these little things will have an impact in the flavor of the new mixed spirit, but it's not going to be so big compared to other things like the style of stills or the maturation. So the malting nowadays sometimes is just done by an external company because it requires a lot of space. But basically you just take the grain, which is barley, soak it in water, and then it gets spread across a floor in a malting house. So basically what you need to do is encourage the sprouting of said barley, and you rotate it regularly to maintain a constant temperature so that it all sprouts evenly. And once that happens, we need to stop the process. And to stop that, you kind of need to dry it. Usually it's done in a kiln, which is just like an oven. I mean, not really, but yeah.
A kiln that you use, I swear I used something like that in school. Did you ever do like clay and stuff? I know this is completely off topic.
When I was a kid,
yeah, you make you perform like a cup or something, you put it in a kiln. I'm assuming it's just something that kind of heats it all up and dries it out. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly different, than a kiln used for ceramics.
Right, okay.
But it has the same function. So what you would use is a type of fuel, and you'll have the barley located at a separate level.
Okay.
And it's just going to receive constant heat, which is going to basically dry it.
Right.
Depending on what fuel you use, you will impart flavor into the barley. So if you want a peated whiskey, you would use peat to basically create smoke.
Right.
And that smoke contains something called phenols. And those phenol molecules will attach to the barley. And that's going to give you like the smoky flavor in a whiskey later in the process.
Right. Just quickly, just for the guys that may not know, the peat is something that naturally forms under the ground, correctly? You have to sort of farm for it and dig it. And then obviously literally just dry that out and burn it, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. I just thought, we'll clear that up. Just as I say, people may not have heard the term peat before. So as I say, it's, well, I suppose where the word peated comes from.
Yeah, it's like an organic compound that forms through thousands of years and is usually just like soil and just organic materials like mosses, and it actually takes quite a while to dry. I believe it's usually like a year or so. So it's quite a long process. And then also depending where it's extracted from, it will have slightly different flavors. So if you use, let's say, peat from like from a coastal area, you might have some sort of maritime seaweed sort of notes in it. If you use peat from, let's say, the Highlands, from the central area, I think the whiskey is going to taste a bit more like barbecue smoke instead of like medicinal.
So I guess that's down to sort of like the not the compounds, the I forget the word. What's the word?
Like the environment.
Yeah, so the environment and like the minerality, of the soil and the peat. Like as you say, closer to the coast, I imagine a little bit more salty notes and things like that come through, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%.
It's a very similar process, like in ways, to cigar creating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like with the different regions and how it affects the tobacco differently. It's so strange how it comes so hand in hand. But I was also going to ask, is the peat, do you choose to do that, or is that a must in the process?
So traditionally, it was just the source of fuel for some of the islands, because as you can imagine, you can't really ship coal and things like that. So it was just what was used at that time to fuel the homes of people, and also the distilleries and any sort of product they used it for. So I think nowadays it's a choice, because it creates such a unique flavor profile that some people really like it and they want to keep that as part of the character of their whiskey. So if that's what you want to do, you will choose to use peat in your process, or you would purchase barley that has been produced or dried with peat.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, so
and usually you could, as a company, I guess you could specify the intensity of said peatiness, which is basically ppm, that's phenol parts per million. So I guess if you want highly peated barley, you could specify it to the malting company, and they would give you like a lightly peated barley or heavily peated barley.
So brands like Bruichladdich or Octomore, I think that is Bruichladdich, isn't it?
I think they're slightly different, aren't they? They're different distilleries.
Are they different?
It's actually the same distillery, but they have 3 different brands under their umbrella. You've got Port Charlotte, Bruichladdich, and Octomore.
Yeah, so I believe they're quite peaty whiskies, aren't they? They're quite intense, so they would use a lot of peated, peat, wouldn't they?
The branding around Octomore I really like, especially with the darker bottles.
It's a nice aesthetic.
It just looks really clean. I think this is a common theme for me. I just, dressed head to toe in black. I like dark looking cigars, and I like the branding when it's all nice and dark and moody and stuff. So it's probably just a force of habit for me. But it always stands out when you see it on the shelf. But then everyone always says, oh, well, Octomore's a heavily peated whiskey. It's not one for the faint-hearted.
100%. Bruichladdich is actually unpeated, so you can fairly recommended to most people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Port Charlotte is peated, and Octomore is basically the most peated whiskey on the market. Obviously, they do a range of different levels through their products, but just to give you an idea, Lafroig or Ardbeg. Well, Lafroig, I believe it's around 50 or 55% ppm.
Right.
Octomore is like over 100.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I've heard Lafroy is like pretty peaty.
Yeah.
So wow, that's intense. I'd love to try the Octomore then, just to see the difference. So put the Octomore next to like a Speyside.
Yeah.
And see what the difference is.
I feel like the Octomore would just completely blow the Speyside flavour
100%.
profile out of the
Try
room.
the Speyside first.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if not, it's just gonna completely overtake.
So with something like the Octomore, is that recommended for pairing with a cigar or not?
Yes, I think for people that enjoy extreme sort of flavor profiles, or if you want to perhaps pair a very heavy full flavor cigar with it, I think it will work. But you need to be careful, because if you pair anything that's too light, it won't withstand the flavor intensity.
Yeah, that's always something that we talk about, especially at events and things, and I imagine you guys do as well. It's always a challenge to find the perfect one, and it's a never ending sort of journey to find the perfect pairing, right? But that's something that we always say. If you're going to go and say get a Connecticut cigar that's very smooth and mellow, if you was to pair that say with Lafroy or Octomore, likelihood is when you sample the cigar, you're not going to get much of the flavor profile. So it's kind of trying to marry up the two to get it correctly, right?
I mean, I don't think there's a wrong or right way, because it's so personal.
Yeah,
whatever
sure.
you enjoy, I think, pairing things is going to be a labor of knowing yourself, knowing your taste profiles. And if we do it with guests, I guess just getting them to explain what they usually enjoy. Because there might be people that prefer things to balance and others that prefer them to contrast. So
yeah, it's
That's a good
interesting.
point, yeah.
It's very interesting, people's personal preferences. But I think that's what makes it very, like, as I say, we always say how subjective it is, but it's so interesting to see what people enjoy. And as I say, what we kind of enjoy is very different. And I imagine what you enjoy to us is very, very different. But yeah, it's a cool, interesting kind of avenue to kind of dive into, right?
Yeah. So obviously, so that's the malting. Or is there more to the malting, or is it just go straight onto the mashing?
So after it's dried, we need to basically mill it down into a format that allows us to extract those sugars. And this happens in a mill. Usually there's a percentage of 70% grits, 20% husks, and 10% flour to the ratio of this grist. And we need to be careful, because if it contains too much flour, it might basically block the mash tun. So yeah.
Is that because it kind of congeals?
Yeah.
As if you added water to flour, it kind of all congeals and it becomes like
It's like you're making bread.
Like it becomes like a bit of a solid kind of thing.
Exactly. So,
yeah, I imagine if you get the ratios wrong, it's a little bit of a challenge to sort it out.
I mean, I doubt they would. I think anyone working at the distillery, they probably have a strict sort of thing to follow.
Yeah,
I'd imagine so.
I imagine it's an art. It's the same as blending cigars, right? It's an absolute art, and the people at the top of the game are, as I say, hats off to them, because it's a difficult thing to do for sure. So as I say, malting, and then it moves on to
mashing.
And
this is where the extraction of the sugars takes place. We will basically just move the grist, which is this basically floury compound, into a big mashing tun, which is usually a huge vat, I guess, made of stainless steel. It would have like mechanical arms that rotate to aid the solubility of the sugars into the water.
Right.
And we will add hot water to it. In a controlled environment, obviously. This will just get stirred over several hours, and the process gets repeated 3 times. Only the liquid or the wort from the 2 first mashings will move to the next step. The third one goes into the next batch because it doesn't contain enough sugar to start the fermentation.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that, forgive me if I'm wrong, but there's heads, tails, and something else, right? Is that something to do with that?
That's distillation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of the game. I'm too far forward. Yeah, my apologies. I was going to ask though, I imagine there is a specific reason as to why you use hot water rather than cold, but is there an effect if you used cold water? Would that completely sort of ruin the process, or?
It wouldn't ruin the process. It's just not gonna be very effective in dissolving all those sugars.
Right.
It's a little bit like if you would put sugar in a cup of water and it's cold. It's gonna take you ages to dissolve it and a lot more work.
Okay.
Than if you use warm or hot water.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, because I just thought I was like hot water, but I thought, what happens if you use cold? But that makes sense. So that's sort of the mashing process?
Yes, that's the mashing. And once we have the sugary water, it gets extracted through the bottom of the mash tun, which has these little perforations, which is why it's important for it to not get clogged, because obviously you wouldn't let the liquid through.
Yeah.
And then we have this basically sugary water. This goes into the fermentation tank, and they can be made out of stainless steel or traditionally pine wood. We'll add the yeast to this. It gets cooled before getting passed into the fermentation tank, just because if it's too hot, it will kill the yeast. Right. Because yeast is just like a living organism.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this process can take anywhere between 48 to 72 hours. So I'll probably say usually it's a couple of days, at least 2 days.
Is that down to sort of preference, or is that sort of the ingredients you use? Like, can it vary, like alter based on personal preference, or is that something that you kind of have to stick dead to?
I would say depending on your desired outcome as a distillery, what type of liquid you want to produce, you would use a longer or a shorter fermentation.
Right.
But usually after 52 hours, the yeast is going to become inactive.
Okay.
But people there's distillers that prefer to, leave it in for a bit longer or do like a shorter fermentation. So it's just up to the preference of each distillery.
Okay.
So that's that process. Mm-hmm. Is that the full process? And then it moves on to
the distillation. Yeah. So with this process, I mentioned wood as well as part of the prime material they use for this fermentation tanks. Traditionally, they used it because it was believed to have antibacterial properties, but also to aid against like cold weather in winter. And also it was believed that the bacteria in the wood is beneficial to the fermentation. So there's still some distilleries that have wooden washbacks. So it's something a bit rare. So if you visit the distillery and you see wooden wash bags, it's kind of cool because that's the traditional
Because I was going to say,
thing.
We went to a distillery. Well, I don't remember seeing.
No, it was all copper and things like that. Yeah. Because I was going to say that there must be sort of the use of, say, stainless steel and pine wood. They're very like polar opposite in terms of material, and the characteristics that must bring to the final product must be quite vast, right? The difference is thingy. But as you say, if it's quite cool to see that people are still using that same traditional thing and not moved over to the stainless steel thing.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with stainless steel. I think for once it gives you an easier life to clean it, you know, because there's a lot of cleaning involved. And I don't know if you guys visited a distillery, but when it's fermenting, it's usually very pungent. The liquid is very cloudy. There's all these bubbles rising.
Doesn't look great, does it?
Yeah. So, I could see why people would move to stainless steel. It just looks like a lot easier to maintain and clean.
Cleanliness and things like that.
Yeah, I suppose it depends whether people want to keep the heritage or not, the true history of whiskey, the process in their own process. So... But yeah, I believe as well, obviously the distills themselves, some of them differ in shape and size, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
What's the reason behind that?
So after we've got this fermented liquid, it's very low in alcohol. It's only between 5 and 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And to this stage, you could basically just make beer if you wanted
Right.
to. It will then move on to the stills, which usually they work in pairs. There's a wash still, and then there's a spirit still. The wash stills are usually much bigger, and they are usually, you'll see them when you enter a distillery because they'll be a lot bigger because they have to basically put up with a lot more liquid compared to the spirit still, which is going to be reduced by quite a lot because it just concentrates the alcohol. The shape of the stills is going to have an effect in the flavor style that you're looking to produce. So obviously the size will also be important, but I would say the shape, the length of said necks, the base, of the stills, how big it is, the line arm. If you noticed, obviously, I don't know if everyone knows how a still looks, but it's let's say like a copper kettle.
Right.
Obviously, the liquid will start boiling, and alcohol has a higher evaporation point than water. So it's going to start rising up the neck of the still, and it's going to reach a point where it's going to start condensating. Depending on the pipe that connects the still to the condenser, if it's super inclined, or how it's placed, or how long it is, all those things will have an influence in the flavor of the whiskey.
So I take it, because I was actually going to ask you about that, because some, as you say, you get to the top, they're angled up, and then some are flat.
Yeah.
Is it something to do with the duration of time that it takes, right, for it to move up? If it's inclined, it takes longer, and then if it's flatter or down, it can happen quicker. Am I correct in thinking that?
That's correct. So basically, the more inclined, you will create more reflux, which will just force those compounds, those alcohols, to basically come back and work harder.
Right.
And only the finer molecules will move to the next step.
Right. So
you will create like a lighter sort of spirit, like a more... I wouldn't say floral because, that's not necessarily always true, but definitely like a more refined style of whiskey. While if you're looking for like a robust, oily style of whiskey, you don't really want these heavier esters to stay in the still. You want them to travel all the way to the next step. So you would make it easier for them by making like a shorter neck or a less inclined arm or so on.
See, it's crazy to think that subtle changes, because the angle of the thing could change by say 10 degrees, but the effect that has on the final product is massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember, as I say, we went to the Farley Bay distillery in Yorkshire, and obviously they went through all of these things with us. And as I say, it was just insane to think, for something from, if you're not into that kind of thing or you don't know for sure, you'd look at that and think, oh, okay, it's just a pipe, but they had to fit it like that.
It's just a pipe.
You know what I mean? But it's very, very different. It's very sort of intricate details like that really, really play a massive part in the overall product. It's interesting. Very interesting.
Definitely. It's very geeky, I think, unless you're into these things, you might not pay attention, but it's subtle, but I feel like every little thing, it's what makes each whiskey unique. It's why, so many distilleries have different flavor profiles, and even like 2 casks that were made at the same time from the same distillery, just because they are maybe placed in a different place in the warehouse, or for whatever strange reason, they might taste completely different.
So
It's bizarre. Isn't it?
I
really
know,
crazy.
right?
It is. It's strange. So when it sort of travels up to there, what kind of happens next? What's the next
So
step?
it starts condensing, and usually distilleries will have something in place connected to the still, which is a condenser.
Right.
And traditionally, they used to use what's called a warm tap condenser, and now they use a Shell tap condenser, I believe. And basically, it's just it gets cooled with cold water, okay,
Right.
to help it become a liquid again and enter the liquid state once again. It's just like technicalities of how this condenser works.
Right.
But it's usually either like the vapor, it would either be in the condenser tubes, which will happen if it's a warm tap condenser. It will just be like in a big bucket of water.
Right.
I mean, I say bucket, but it's usually like 5 meters thing
Right.
that's submerged in water.
Slightly bigger than a bucket.
Yeah, definitely bigger. Or it will be something slightly smaller with like a cold water jacket.
Okay.
But
So you mean like a separate tank that kind of goes round?
yeah, it will be like upper,
Okay.
higher up in the connected to like the line arm kind of.
Okay.
And all this is doing is just basically revert it back into a liquid state so that it can go further into the process, which is where they will start separating into what you mentioned earlier, the foreshots, the heart, and the feints. And this is just something that needs to be done through a lot of practice and a lot of knowledge, where you would need to know what part of that liquid you want to transform into the new make spirit and put into maturation into a barrel. Because the first part of the distillation is usually high in alcohol, but quite pungent. And then the last part is low in alcohol, but still quite pungent.
Right.
So you need to be quite knowledgeable in knowing where to make that cut so that you can only extract what's basically decent enough to be matured into a barrel. I mean, they don't just discard this foreshots and feints. They just go back into the next distillation.
Right.
It's good that they keep everything.
Yeah.
Like, there's no waste, it seems like.
Yeah. Even the grist from the mashing, they usually work with local farms for it to be fed to like farm animals.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool because, as I say, it gives back the bits that we don't use for sort of whiskey production. It's good to keep it and have a purpose for that side of it as well.
It's very important because when you think about it, this is no like a little production. It's huge. It's like an industrial big building with huge amounts of product coming in and going out. So it would be a lot of waste if you didn't find a sustainable way to.
Yeah, as I say. Just going back briefly, we mentioned the stills. They're usually made of copper, right?
Yes.
So copper contact is quite important in the process of
100%.
whiskey, right? It imparts flavour as well as like the colour, is it? Or
more than imparting flavour, it actually removes sulfur and unwanted sort of notes in the liquid. And it's just a great conductor of heat. And it's also super malleable, so it's easy to work with. You can make the stills in any shape or form you want. So it just does basically, it ticks all the boxes.
Oh, okay.
You know?
So it's more for sort of the refinement of the liquid outcome. Okay.
So it just aids in removing any sort of impurities and unwanted sort of flavors from the spirit. And it's just like the perfect type of material for everything else that, you know.
So they don't make them, they've never used anything other than copper? It's only ever been copper?
Yeah, I don't think it would make sense because you do need something to remove unwanted flavors and you do need something that has like a great heat conduction. So obviously if you would use another type of material, it might give you like a subpar sort of quality. So I don't think it's something they would
change out.
Yeah, they would change if there's no reason to.
So I guess once you've got sort of the liquid that you want from the final process, it then moves on to maturation.
And I also have to mention that usually in Scotland, the distillation process is carried out twice, with a few exceptions. Auchentoshan, they are triple distilled, and a couple other liquids. But Irish whiskey is usually triple distilled. And basically, the more you distill something, the more you refine it and the more lighter it becomes. And I feel like that's why sometimes people that love Scotch whiskey don't like maybe Irish whiskey or vice versa, because one of them might be slightly stronger or more robust in flavor and the other one might be slightly lighter. But this is not always the case. But traditionally speaking, Scotch whiskies are double distilled and Irish whiskies are triple distilled.
Do you ever get any distilleries that distill more than 3 times? Or is that like a no-no?
Not that I'm aware. I wouldn't see why you would want to remove so much flavor. I'll need to look into that and see if anyone does anything like that. But I've never heard of anything over triple distillation.
Yeah, I've seen triple distilled on a few whiskey bottles and things like that. And again, it's a detail that I kind of brush over and take no notice of. But again, it's a massive part of the final product, isn't it?
You might actually enjoy something that's triple distilled.
Potentially, yeah. Because like I said, I've got a bit of a sweet tooth, whereas you like the more of the peaty ones. So yeah, I reckon so. But have you? So is that the whole process behind everything, or is that?
Yeah, and then obviously we'll move this new make into oak casks. Okay. And then it will be stored into a warehouse. Traditionally, they would store them in a dunnage warehouse where the floor is exposed, and they would usually be stacked like one on top of another, and usually like 3 stories. Or nowadays they use palletized warehouses, which are a bit more modern. And depending on the warehouse as well, people say that it's believed to have an effect on the flavor of the whiskey as well. And then it will spend a minimum of 3 years and a day in those barrels. After, it will be able to be called whiskey. Anything less than 3 years and a day, then it's not legally whiskey in Scotland.
As you say, they have a few things that is very specific. I mean, why not just 3 years? It has to be 3 years and a day for it to become.
I think that's just like a legality to ensure that it's actually 3 years.
Yeah. Okay.
That people don't cheat with.
Okay.
Slightly younger liquids.
Right. Yeah. No. It's something that people always. I think I've heard it in a few conversations that people have had, and they're like, "Why is that 3 years in a day? Like, what's the use for the extra day?" But as I say, it's something we've learned again.
Because I guess the time of the bottle, the time of you putting the liquid in the cask is not always registered. So to be safe, I guess it's just an extra day. So it's 3 years, like fully. Yeah. It's like, 12 o'clock.
It's a whiskey.
It's ready to be bottled.
That's quite funny, really.
Yeah, I suppose it stops you rushing the process, I guess.
Yeah.
But then, as you say, then it's goes away to mature and sort of things, and then as I say, the bottling then comes after that, which I suppose clues in the name as to what the bottling consists of. But I suppose extracting it from the barrels into the bottles and then obviously labelling up and things like that.
I mean, usually, because most distilleries won't release things as single casks, what will happen is that the master blender of each distillery will select specific casks from their warehouses to create whatever release they are doing. So let's say famous whiskey, Macallan 12-year-old. It might contain liquids that are over 12, but the age on the bottle reflects the younger liquid in that sort of vatting or marriage.
Okay.
Because it's not just one cask. You want to create a consistent flavor profile. It's a bit like when you make a cigar, you need to, take a leaf that's stronger and a leaf that's serving the burning purpose. So all these little factors make the final product. So it's the same with whiskey. they will need to select specific casks to bring maybe sweetness and body and, whatever they want to achieve. And sometimes if they don't have enough, let's say 12-year-olds, they might need to use older stock.
Right.
For that purpose, or if the flavor is not quite yet there.
Okay.
I think there was a famous release of Glendronach 21-year-old couple of years ago that everyone was buying because it was way older, because they stopped producing it was closed for a couple of years, Glendronach. So whatever they released as a 21 was actually over the age. I think it was over 25. So people were just trying to buy it because it was like a great value for your money.
Yeah.
Wonder how much that's going for right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's not released anymore,
the
resale on it will be quite high, I imagine.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because, as I said, that's something that I've just learned right now. I mean, the age statement, I always thought that all the liquid in that bottle would be the age that it says on the bottle. But no, that's interesting to see that it may have liquid that's say 2-3 years older, but they always go with the lowest.
Yeah. So never younger. You cannot put any sort of age statement on the label that's any younger than any cask that went into that vatting.
Right. And I assume they never use, say, the oldest age of whiskey, because I suppose that's misdirection as well,
exactly,
is it? Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that will just allow people to basically, let's say, blend 7 casks of 3-year-old whiskey and 1 of 18, call it 18.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Cheating the system,
That makes sense.
And I believe that the longer you age the whiskey in the barrel, the less of the whiskey is left.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes a lot rarer.
Yeah, definitely. So there's something called evaporation, which in the whiskey industry is known as angel share. And just depending on the climate, in Scotland, it's about 2% per year. You go to India, and I believe it's something ridiculous like 12% per year. The longer that liquid spends in the barrel, the more you're going to lose out of that content. So, you can see why things are expensive over a certain age, or why special releases are made sometimes, maybe like a single cask or things that are a little bit more unique, because there was a lot of care put into looking after that barrel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess you could just leave it in a warehouse for 30 plus years, but usually you will need to try them every now and then, see how they're doing.
That's a long time to wait. You've got to be really patient to want to make a whiskey, haven't you? I mean, I don't think I've got the patience for that.
Yeah.
Sitting there for like 20 odd years
waiting for it.
Yeah, it's a long time.
I think in the cognac industry, there's master blenders that would not see their product finalized, especially things like Louis XIII, because obviously it's a ridiculous amount of maturation. So imagine you make something, you put it in a barrel, and you need to wait for the next generation to come and be like, oh, it's nice, or what's this?
But that's dedication, that's legacy.
I was going to say, and it's also kind of again, hats off to them to be able to explain that to the next generation, because as you say, they might not be around for when that actually makes it out of the cask into the bottling.
Exactly.
For someone to be able to take that product from someone from before and create exactly, or make exactly what that person intended, it's special. It is really special.
Yeah, definitely.
Strange.
Oh, there's so much to it. I mean, I feel like you know a lot more than I do on this. You did some research.
I did a little bit of research.
I'm pretty much blind into this. So,
I mean, I thought if I know a little bit here and there, I can then at least keep up with the conversation. I think if I'd come in blind, I'd have been like,
a bit like me, a little bit like me. So thank you for that.
I suppose that moves on. I mean, that kind of encapsulates the process behind everything. And people are probably sitting here wondering why we don't have a whiskey in front of us. But we do have one to the side. Just before we get into that, I just got a personal question for you. We always ask people, and I think it's quite a big question to ask. People always ask, what's your favourite cigar, or what was the first one? I guess for you, can you remember your first whiskey? kind of how it resonated with you. Did you enjoy it? Did you kind of think, oh, I don't know about it? Or, what was your feeling on your first experience?
I mean, my proper first whiskey was actually Ardbeg 10-year-old.
Okay.
I think I probably had whiskey before that, but I wouldn't consider it, it's probably something mixed with Coke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At, younger age when you would not try to appreciate it, but you were just trying to have a good time with your friends.
You just wanted the effect.
Yeah, exactly. So, it was definitely something that I was not expecting. Again, Isla Distillery, very peated. And I was always someone that appreciates, I would say, strange flavors, like pickles or strongly flavored things, or black coffee, or, specific type of cheese that people are like, oh, that stinks, things like that.
It's funny because it's the completely opposite to me. Like, I hate when something's really overly pronounced, especially in food, like as you say, like cheese and things. I can't do it because it's such a robust and such a prominent flavor. But I guess that's something that you look for. It's
not, I wouldn't just have that, but I do enjoy trying these things. And I think they can pair well with something a little bit more light or bland. And elevate the experience of the other food. Like you can kind of use it to contrast. So when I tried a whiskey that was super smoky, super peated, just tasted like, I don't know, like nothing I've ever had before. And I feel like that's what made me really become so interested in whiskey, because I was like, wow, what's this? It's weird.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a story of like love at first sight with whiskey then.
Yeah.
Because people always say that it's quite as you say, it's a prominent flavor profile, it's an acquired taste. People for the first time don't always enjoy it until they kind of understand it a little bit more. But I guess for you it was completely different. It was straight away, it was something that like really dragged you in, I guess.
Yeah, I smelled it and I thought, wow, this reminds me of like being somewhere in, maybe not necessarily nature, but like in the countryside, having like a barbecue outdoors.
Right.
Yeah, it just evoked a type of memory that I was like, I thought it's just whiskey.
Yeah.
Like, why is it making me think about these experiences? So, I thought it's very unusual.
I kind of get it though. I really do. I mean, when we had the Isla, it just reminded me of a bonfire.
Yeah.
Like bonfire night.
Yeah.
Just gave me that vibe. So I do get it. And I feel like when you relate like a cigar or whiskey to an experience, you then appreciate it a lot more and want to dive into it a lot more. So I think that's a really special experience that you had actually. Really nice.
Yeah, for sure. As I say, I mentioned previously.
What about yourself?
I don't actually think off the top of my head what I had. It was probably a Speyside. It might have actually been Stella Do Speyside at one of the first events that I attended. That was another thing. I wouldn't say that it was the same story for me. I wouldn't say that it was one that I kind of sampled and was like, this is me. Cigar-wise, it was more that. You sample your first one, it was okay, cool.
Yeah.
The aromas and the flavor profile kind of brings back that memory of something. I didn't necessarily have that with whiskey, but I can obviously see how that comes about. It was more of, as I say, an acquired type thing, sampling it a little bit more here and there at events and stuff like that. Kind of brought me to really want to know about it. And obviously this podcast is obviously definitely going to help me with that as well. And the bit of research that I did beforehand as well. As I said, there's just as much to that as the cigar side of things, which you kind of, if you don't know or don't look into it, you're kind of ignorant to.
Yeah, 100%.
And there's so much history behind all of it as well. So there's always something to learn. But
yeah,
I mean, what about you? Can you remember your first experience?
To be honest, I was just trying to think. I think it was actually when you came down here for training. So I think we had the Isla and the Speyside.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one we had first. Do you?
I hope the Speyside.
I was going to say, I assume it would be
most likely the Speyside.
I don't think I would give you guys the answer straight away.
You just do it back to front that way.
I think I was quite shocked at the experience. Really, I was like, oh, God, this is intense. Like, it burns. But I knew, coming into this role, I had kind of had to dive into it a little bit more and try and understand and appreciate it. And admittedly, we kind of jumped, well, I say we, for myself, I kind of jumped more into the cigar side of things than I did the whiskey. So yeah, I don't think I had that kind of experience where I related it to something. But I suppose I made a memory from it. So that's the main thing, isn't it?
Well, I'm sorry if I was the culprit for a bad memory.
No, I wouldn't say it wasn't a bad memory at all. It was just different. It stood out to me. But yeah, to be fair, I was never a big drinker. I've never been a big drinker at all in my life. I think I've been drunk maybe like 2 or 3 times in my life. So I never really tried new like spirits or anything. Usually for me, if I was going out, it would just be like a Pepsi or a Coke or something like that. So it was very different.
Mr. Sensible.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I don't think you have to be a big drinker to enjoy whiskey. And actually, I've been doing, I mean, I know it's just popular for everyone to do dry January. I've kind of continued, and now I'm just, having whiskey for the enjoyment of trying something I'm interested in, instead of for the purpose of like getting drunk or whatever. So yeah. When I go out, I'm not drinking.
Yeah, I feel like whiskey is exactly that, right? It's the experience side of things, more so than the effect of it, right?
Yeah,
it's the 100%. Same as what we say, I suppose, for cigars. People that smoke cigarettes will smoke cigarettes for the effect and the nicotine hit. People that sample cigars and enjoy cigars do it for exactly that, the experience and the feelings you get from it. And, it's very different to just picking up a cigarette or, in whiskey's case, picking up a pint of lager or something like that.
And it's also something nice that connects people. So if you're with people, you enjoy their company, and you're having a nice conversation. I think it just brings everything together to have a product or something that you can just have with your friends or, anyone that you want to spend some time with. I think it's just a nice exchange of like seeing what everyone's opinion is on the product.
Yeah, this is why our events are great, and we always recommend them to everyone, because you meet so many people from different walks of life, no matter where they're from, what they believe or what they do. You just connect over a spirit and a spirit and a cigar, and it's wonderful, it really is. And we've made some really great connections here, and I'm sure you have too at your events. And you make friends. You really do, and that's so important, I think, because they're not just customers; they're friends. You look out for them. It really is wonderful.
Yeah, it's 100% interesting to see how handmade products like cigars and whiskey can bring such a diverse audience together that maybe would have never met otherwise.
Yeah, it is crazy. But I think a good segue into it, I guess, as I say, I previously mentioned just a little bit briefly about the whiskey to the left of you, Raluca. And I think that now is probably the perfect time. Exactly. We've been waiting a long time. So I think it's the perfect opportunity to bring that in, introduce the whiskey, which I'll allow you to do. And yeah, we'll go through the, proper way of sampling and how you get the most out of it.
I mean, I wouldn't say there's definitely a technical way to do it if you are maybe trying to come with tasting notes for a product or to do it like at a professional level. But if you're just trying to enjoy whiskey, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a wrong or right way, but there's definitely steps you can take towards appreciating it.
Yeah, of course.
So today we'll be trying the Stella du Macduff 15-year-old, which is a Highland single malt whiskey. It's one of our releases. We are independent bottlers. This one is bottled at 54% ABV, which is why we got some water as well.
Okay. Just briefly, you just mentioned the term independent bottlers. Obviously, Stella Du are an independent bottler, but could you just explain a little bit, like what does that mean? for the people that are watching that may not know?
So independent bottlers played a vital role through the years in the whiskey industry because basically back in the day, distilleries wouldn't bottle their own liquids and single malts weren't really that popular. It was mostly blends that you would find on the market and what most consumers would enjoy. So the distilleries would sell their products to merchants and blenders, and they would then decide how to mix them, what to do, how to release them, and they would usually do so under their own label or under their own name. Obviously, nowadays, I believe indie bottlings or independent bottlings just bring to the market something a little bit more unique. It doesn't have to be necessarily for the connoisseur, but I do think that it adds a little bit of interest and unusual sort of things to the portfolio, because you would present something that a distillery wouldn't usually do. Obviously, as we were mentioning earlier, distilleries wouldn't usually release single casks. So it's just going to allow you to try something a little bit different, sometimes bottled at a different strength. Something we didn't mention, but when you bottle a whiskey, you would usually reduce the strength to whatever desired ABV you want. Most of them would be 43, 46. 40 is the minimum alcohol by volume that you can have for whiskey. But some independent bottlings would be released at natural strength or cask strength, which basically means no water has been added. And it's just going to allow you to play around with the liquid, add as much or as little as you want. And I don't know, I think it's something a bit more unusual. And usually there's no added coloring as well into like an independent bottling. Of course, there's going to be many on the market, but we don't add any coloring to our single casks. And all you see here, all this color is just from the interaction between the spirit and the wood.
That's nice. I love the colour of whiskey. I think it's such a nice colour. I was going to say as well. Sorry,
No. I was going to say I was going to agree with you with the golden brown kind of the depth of the colour is appealing. But sorry, carry on.
Fine. So I was just going to say Stalladu as well. I believe that's a Gaelic term, and that means Black Cliff.
Yeah,
is that
that's
right?
Correct.
So where did that come from?
I mean, I would think any sort of brand-related questions in terms of the decisions probably have to be with Ron, because he's the creative.
He's the guy,
Him and Mitchell created the brand. So to be fair, I think it was just to represent the heritage. Obviously, Ron is from Scotland, and he just wanted to transmit this heritage to the consumer. He's great. He comes up with amazing ideas in terms of whiskey, and he's the mastermind behind all our bottlings. It's just it's super fun to work with him. It's amazing to get to try the liquids before we bottle them and have obviously a tasting session to decide what we'll do with it and put the tasting notes together and just go through all the process. It's pretty cool. I
imagine it's quite a special experience every time.
Definitely, yeah.
I feel like every year there's a new Stalladu that comes out as well.
Of course, and it's going to keep, coming out.
I mean, it's good. It's good. They're all limited releases as well, or most of them are limited releases.
Well, all the single casks are, because obviously will be just the liquid from one barrel. This one actually is super limited. There were only 171 bottles from this cask. That's a very, very small amount. And obviously they've all won so many awards through the years. The most recent one, we've won Best Islay single cask in the world in its age category, which is the Oran Islay. And we keep obviously putting out this incredible liquids for for the world to enjoy.
That's an incredible achievement. And as I say, if you're being a part of that, must just feel so rewarding at the same time.
Definitely.
I can imagine.
It's not something you can get in Tesco, that's for sure.
Unfortunately not. You'll have to visit our specialist stores.
Yes.
So, I suppose we'll get into the sampling. As I say, you can run us through the steps, what you would recommend just how to get the most out of what it is you are sampling.
So I would say there's obviously a few steps to tasting a whiskey. I'll just have a sip of water.
No problem.
Got little hats on as well, haven't they?
Yeah. I would say the first step would be to assess the aspect or the visual information, which in this case is going to be the color.
Mm-hmm.
And also you can look at the viscosity. So if you swirl the whiskey around, you will see the whiskey dripping down the glass, and it's going to leave what's called legs.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that? So usually a higher viscosity or slower legs would be an indication of an older liquid, but it could also be strength. In this case, we said 54%. Mm-hmm. This has been finished in port. So it matured initially in a hogshead, and then it was finished in port for a small amount of time. So it won't have a crazy amount of influence from the port cask, just like a little added touch that just brings a nice nuance to a nice layer of flavor to the whiskey. Mm-hmm. After that, the best way to approach it is to try to get all the aromas, which is why we had the little hats on, so that all the flavors would basically just
remain in the glass?
Remain and concentrate in the glass.
Mm-hmm.
It's ideal to have a glass that has this sort of shape with a closer neck, because it will help to nose it and to concentrate these aromas.
Okay.
When you approach it, don't stick your nose straight in, because it's obviously 54% alcohol, so it's quite high. I would say just approach it from a distance first and try to see if you can get anything. We've been smoking cigars, so it might be a little bit hard.
Yeah, I've retrohaled a few times, so maybe I'll put that down for now.
Okay.
So we'll move on from the cigars for once.
Just have like a light sort of sniff of the aromas. I would say most of the information you would get regarding a whiskey is going to be from your nose. It's just an incredible amount of flavors and aromas that you can actually pick. Obviously flavor, it's taste as well, but part of it, a very big part of it, is also aroma.
Well, isn't smell like 70% of our taste or something like that?
Exactly, yeah. So I would say sometimes master blenders wouldn't even taste the whiskey. Mm-hmm. They would just be able to tell most qualities just by smelling it.
Wow, that takes some serious knowledge.
Definitely.
Some experience. Yeah, that's... What are you getting? It's, as you say, difficult because the aroma of the cigars.
I would say you can definitely smell the fruitiness.
I was going to say apple for me.
There's nothing wrong. There's no right or wrong. I would say the beauty of tasting whiskey is that everyone will come up with their own descriptors, which would be tied to your memories, maybe something you've had, something you've tried, something you can relate a certain smell to. And that would be like a nice way to train your nose as well. If you just try individual things by themselves so that you know what they smell like or taste like.
I was going to say, I agree. I can definitely get the fruitiness that you mentioned. As soon as for the first smell, if you like, that was the bit that stood out. It smells quite light to me.
Yeah.
On
the official tasting notes, I think we said strawberries and cream.
Okay. But
there's definitely also, I'm picking a lot of like bananas.
See, this is where like the
experience of doing it over and over again, I suppose.
Not only that, but like the power of suggestion comes in as well, because you're like, oh yeah, bananas, and I'm like, Banana.
But it smells, right? Like obviously suggestion is a big factor, but once you kind of like open your mind to, try to pick things up, you will definitely find something. So suggestion is 100% important.
I think a lot of people really struggle to pick out certain notes that they get, and we get it all the time at events. I'm sure you guys do too. I say, you say you taste all of this, but I don't get that. How do you get all these taste notes? And we say, like you say, relate it to something, relate it to an experience, and then break it down from there. And so I think that's really, really important to do.
I can't pinpoint specific fruit, but I can definitely get the overall roundness and the sweetness.
The easiest way to do it is once you pick, let's say, fruit or cereal or, herbaceous notes or woody notes or spices. Once you pick something, you can try to dive in and pinpoint what type of fruit. Like, is it or citrus? Is it like exotic fruits, or is it like tinned fruits or fresh fruit? And then you can kind of like condense it down. Specific things.
It's also insane. I don't know if you think it's because you do the same thing with cigar reviews and the cigar tasting, right? But it's crazy how the tasting process and everything like that is the exact same. As you say, it's more about the experience and what you can relate that thing to in your own past experiences. And as I say, I think we've mentioned it a few times, but how closely connected both whiskey and cigars are. It's crazy. It's really strange.
You could do this with everything, really. You could do it with coffee. You could do it with tea. You could do it with... I mean, most, good products obviously will have to have some sort of specialty segment to it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is a wrong question as well, but do you know how many people this goes through before it's put on the shelf to decide on the tasting notes or aromas?
It's usually me, Paul, and Ron.
Oh, wow. So, okay. So you're up there with them. Okay.
Which is insane considering you're winning world awards. You think it'd be quite a large group of people and large production lines and things like that. But I suppose, it's... I
mean, there's definitely, the bottling aspect and all this, which I'm not involved in. But in terms of the tasting notes and so on, it's just us. Small but effective.
So I think we've agreed that it's quite fruity.
Let's try to have a sip.
Okay.
But have a small sip and try to prepare your palate. The first sip is not going to be the most pleasant because you kind of need to be, ready for high amount of alcohol. So I would say just use it to kind of coat your palate first.
Okay.
Just take like a small one.
So it's a known that the first sip isn't going to be pleasant in general?
Usually, it's not that it's not going to be pleasant, but you're not going to be able to get that much information because the astringency of the alcohol is going to be the first thing you perceive.
I see.
So you kind of need to coat your mouth first with that, and then we can try it a bit.
So that makes sense because I usually, like when we sample these, I usually take a sip. And then I'm like, I don't know. It's not for me.
I assume when you say get ready, because everyone knows the burning aspect of high volumes of alcohol. So I assume when you say get ready for it, I suppose that's the same sort of thing, kind of nullifying the burn, I guess, and kind of getting used to that.
I mean, you don't have to, but obviously we're trying to try it first without adding water. We'll add water and then we'll add more water and then we'll see what it tastes like. Usually anything at the higher strength is going to have a certain burn to it that you could refer to it as obviously like a harsher sort of flavor. But when you add water, it's going to mellow it quite considerably.
Okay.
Wow, as soon as I sip some, it's like my tongue I feel like my taste receptors are like on fire. Like there's so much going on.
It's pleasant though.
Okay.
It's definitely not as peaty as I thought it would be.
It's actually not peated at all.
No.
See, I'm getting like an element of like a smokiness in the background. I don't know whether that's... Let's say correct, but
I would say it's the char. Yeah, it definitely has some sort of like char notes from the barrel. 100%. I would say let's try two pipettes. I mean, it's not a lot. It's really hard to.
Would you recommend people to buy a pipette?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think it's like an easy way to measure the amount of water you add. Then just swirl it around and just maybe leave it for a couple seconds.
So with, obviously you mentioned the viscosity of it and as you said, the legs when you run it down. By adding the water, does that kind of change any of the elements? Will that
100%.
sort of make it less viscous?
Yeah, of course. It will change the viscosity, but it would also change the flavor. I mean, if you have a smell now.
I don't know if it's just me, but it smells stronger now.
Yeah.
Is that right?
There's no wrong or right. You can just change. Water can literally change it drastically.
I was going to say...
It's a lot more perfumey now. Like
the difference from... I mean, the guys at home will have seen as well. There's not a lot of water that you've just added.
No.
But the change in aroma that you get is completely... it's quite a lot, in my opinion.
I mean, I don't want to say this, but all I'm getting now is bananas.
See, I wanted to say it was like an element of like a caramelly sweetness that I'm getting from it with the water.
Definitely like a candied caramel.
Yeah. I think the first nose that I had taken was really intense, but now it's calmed down quite a lot.
It's actually shocked me how much it's changed it. The tiny bit of water added has changed the smell completely. Obviously, we'll get to the sipping, but... That's insane. It almost smells like a complete different whiskey.
It's like the tiniest amount of water as well.
And you'd see how the burn is different as well now. It tastes like honey.
Not as intense.
The burn's almost gone. It's smooth is probably not the right word, but it's like a cooler kind of flavour, if that makes sense.
I get like a lot of honey sweetness on the back and some like light spice.
I was going to say maybe spice.
Definitely some like oakiness.
Yeah, that's the flavour that's kind of really standing out to me, is that underlying smokiness or that underlying oakiness, if you like.
And then we can definitely try to add more water and see how that will change.
It's so interesting, isn't it? It's so interesting. And as I say, if everyone at home is quite new to whiskey, I recommend doing this, because as I say, this is opening my eyes dramatically. I assume
you could do this with any whiskey, but usually higher ABV wines or cask strength wines would perform better with the added water.
So I suppose with, say, like a Speyside or something really mellow, the water will kind of drown it out, maybe?
Not necessarily. It just depends on the alcohol by volume that the bottle has. Like if it's at 40%, if you add water, you might just completely flatten the whole thing. While if it's like a higher strength, usually it will withstand the water well, and you can find the level at which you prefer to have it. Right. So it's quite customizable, I guess, in that aspect. Like you can
kind of
decide.
Make it universal as well, right? It's like we mentioned earlier about the community aspect and having people, as you said, you like to sit down with friends and sample different whiskies and things like that. If, say, one of your friends doesn't really enjoy a high ABV, you can add the water and it becomes way more accessible to that person. So definitely. I suppose there's a community aspect to that side of it as well.
And funny enough, usually at tasting panels, they would reduce it to about 20% ABV, which is crazy amount. So you could add a lot of water if you want.
Is that so that they can pick up more on the flavour notes and the flavour profile when they, I suppose, judge it?
Yeah, and I guess also to help with the alcohol content.
Oh, yeah,
I guess there's only so much you can taste.
I suppose if you're sampling a fair few, it might tip you over the edge if it's quite high concentrate. But
see, now it's very honeyed. Now I'm getting that honey that you mentioned.
Yeah, but I feel like the intensity has dropped quite a lot.
Yeah, because there's also, well, almost that ethanol-y kind of flavour, the burn or the tingle in your nose when you first take a smell of it. That's completely gone. and it just really mellows it down. So now it's just, as you mentioned, the sweetness of it. Yeah, I can see a lot sweeter on the nose. A lot sweeter.
It's a lot sweeter on the palate as well, but it has like almost like a white pepper. Medium finish. I think actually medium to long, because it does leave like a pleasant note.
There's aftertaste for sure. I don't know what it is, but maybe
it does. It is lasting though. Mm-hmm. I suppose, as you say, long, short, and medium finishes. I suppose you're referring to the amount of time that it lasts after you've taken your last sip.
Yeah, but usually you would refer to it in terms of a pleasant, lasting finish. If something tastes bad and it lasts, I don't think it's a desirable thing.
No,
you know?
of course. Right. No, but it's crazy how the characteristics change with that very, very small added extra water.
We can add even more, like 54%. We've got a lot to play with. But I will say this, at some stage it's probably gonna become like a bit too light.
Right.
But it's just interesting to see how it just keeps evolving, and it's just almost like a new product every time you try it.
Yeah, that's because I'm not gonna lie. I know obviously water will have an effect, but I didn't realise with such small volume how
we're
much
literally,
of it,
you've seen these pipettes, we're literally adding like 2 droplets.
Yeah. And as you say, it's evolving into not a new whiskey, but a completely different flavour profile, a completely different experience.
Oh, see. Okay, so now it's reminded me of caramel popcorn.
I'm getting like a toffee kind of flavour, like a very sweet,
like a bit of like not salty, but like a sweet
salty. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Almost like sea spray or something.
That's incredible. I'm actually shocked to how much it changes. I know I keep saying it. It's like a broken record, but I'm actually really shocked.
That's impressive, isn't it?
Because now that sort of, as you said, that
it almost has like a champagne fizz to it.
Right. It's going to change your opinion on whiskey.
Well, it's opened me up for sure. I think I need to do it this way in future and to really appreciate it a lot more.
I suppose I assume that you would recommend this for sort of new whiskey connoisseurs or whatever.
For anyone, honestly. If you want to have an interesting experiment or an interesting experience, definitely.
But something like this is something that we could do, or something that you've probably done at, say, an event. Because you can then dive deeper into the background and the flavour profiles and, as you say, how much it changes. Because I think it would shock quite a few people, even if people have been enjoying whiskey for a while, trying something completely new and then just gradually adding a little bit more and a little bit more. I think it'll open people's minds to realising that the whiskey isn't necessarily just that whiskey. You can change it and you can adapt it to different occasions and different experiences.
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. And again, it's such a personal experience. Maybe someone will dislike it and someone else would like it at higher strength. And, it's just, there's no right or wrong or like a bad or a good way to enjoy a whiskey. I guess it's controversial, but, if you want to add more water or add... I don't condone ice usually. Myself, I don't want to add ice to whiskey, but I know it's something that some people enjoy, and there's nothing wrong with it. So it's just whatever your personal preference is.
Yeah, of course.
Talking of personal preferences, do you have a favorite flavor profile that you've come across over the years?
I would have probably said Islay, just because I like that peated character. But I think I'm very open-minded. I enjoy trying loads of different varieties of whiskeys. And I think it's just such an exciting market that will be a shame to not dive into like the different types and just stick to one.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Because I suppose a lot of people, well, from what I see, a lot of people think Scotch is the be-all and end-all, which Scotch obviously has a lot of tradition and a lot of history, but there seems to be a lot more coming in the future from different regions and sort of different countries. Like I saw something that like New Zealand and places like that are now starting to produce whiskies and things like that. And I imagine that, again, what we said earlier about the different regions, the flavour profiles over there must be so different to what it is, say, up north of in Scotland.
100%. Yeah. I think it's important to respect traditions and to acknowledge, where whiskey came from. But it's also important to allow for exploration and diversity and to, try things that are not possible under Scotch whiskey denomination. There's loads of master distillers that moved to other distilleries in different countries or, just different provenance, so that they have that ability to play around with things that maybe are not super traditional and they wouldn't be allowed in Scotch whiskey. Like, for example, the age. That's just a thing that it's specific to Scotland. Which makes sense, because if we look at, let's say, India as a climate, their speed of maturation is much higher, and because of the heat, basically you just force a more rapid interaction between the wood and the spirit. So it would make sense for them to release something that's slightly younger but still has like a lot of flavor. They released a 10-year-old, and I believe it's around £600 because that's just a huge amount of time for a liquid that is interacting so quickly. And they've probably lost a huge amount of that barrel.
Right.
I think it's called Greedy Angels.
Okay.
From Amrut. And it's like, quite expensive because obviously 10 years in a hot climate, it's a lot of time.
I like the name Greedy Angels as well, so it relates to the angel share thing. That's quite a cool correlation.
See, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even pick up on that, so you're listening well.
A very interesting name.
For sure.
But yeah, we see a huge rise in New World whiskey outside of Scotland. But do you think there are any sort of up and coming regions that we're going to see a lot more of in the future, and that may not overtake Scotland or Ireland or anything like that, but do you think they'll be very prominent in the industry?
I mean, you visited File Bay. English whiskey is becoming pretty big. English Whiskey Distillery, one of their whiskeys won Best in the World not long ago. And obviously, you've got Welsh whiskey, you've got Indian, Japanese, I think it's pretty established by now. You've got, as you were saying, New Zealand, Canada. There's just Australia, Taiwan. South Korea is actually just releasing a single malt. I think they released one last year. So that's going to be interesting to try.
Wow.
So yeah, there's definitely a boom in, the interest in whiskey and loads of new releases. So it's an exciting time for the whiskey enjoyers, I think.
I think it's always important to have new innovative ways and people doing things and putting their own spin on it, because it gives you a whole different experience, right? So I guess, as I say, with Scotch whisky, you've got the, say, restrictions or the guidelines that you have to follow religiously. Which
they're important, though, because we need to remember that if you don't have those protecting sort of regulations in place, you could just end up with subpar quality products or things on the market that is just not what the label says,
Right.
Like, you do need those regulations to protect the products,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just also fun to be able to experiment with new things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, I was recently at the World Drinks Awards, which is awesome. I met some guys there. They were talking to me about their whiskey, and they actually said, funnily enough, that apparently some of the best barley you can get is in Norfolk. They get all of their barley from Norfolk.
Yeah,
So apparently
English
it's very
barley
good.
is a thing, and you do grow quite a lot here.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was really cool, actually. So I think they're based up north somewhere, but they get all the barley from here, which is cool.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Although Norfolk is quite a big.
It's a vast place, really.
Yeah, it's quite a big area, to be fair.
But it always feels like it's close to home, though, doesn't it? It feels like, okay, cool, we're actually providing something for somewhere, you know. But yeah, it's incredible. And as I say, there seems to be more and more popping up all across the world. And hopefully, obviously, we'll get to sample some more going over the next few months and the next few years. But exciting times ahead by the sounds of it.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Talking of exciting times, though, are there any times where you're at an event or at a different, like a bar or somewhere, and when you hear about the fact that they've got a certain whiskey, you get really excited about it? Is there any particular whiskey you really love and jump at the opportunity?
I mean, I do love Campbelltown whiskies, and it's a shame that, they are so scarce and limited, and people seem to, resell them for super high amounts. So yeah, whenever I go to a bar and I see something from, like, let's say Hazelburn or Springbank, I do tend to get excited just because it should be available to everyone, So it's good to see people that put it behind the bar and.
It's a shame, and I think we're definitely in an age where reselling and keeping hold of things and driving up the price is quite a prominent thing. I think you see that across all industries.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's nice to see those seemingly out of reach products being readily available for people who not necessarily in the industry, or they're just kind of enjoying themselves, but they still can get their hands on these seemingly super high-end products.
I mean, they're not even high-end. It's just made high-end because people seem to rush to buy it and then resell it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it seems to be a growing issue across many things, but yeah, it
does.
But
also anything that's like independent bottlings, I'm usually quite excited to try them, because you never know what you're getting. It's always something new, something different.
Awesome. I want to ask a fun question now. Before that, should we talk about the actual pairing itself? Yeah. Because I had some whiskey and I reverted back to the cigar, and like the mixture of the flavors is incredible. I really love the Oliva Serie V Auction Selection. So without whiskey, I'm happy, but with the whiskey as well, it really complements each other, and it's really nice. So what about the Diamond Crown there?
So I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but I feel like this cigar is quite robust, earthy, deep, dark flavour notes. There's a little bit of sweetness here and there, but it's not sort of a mellow cigar, right? It's kind of medium to full in flavour and strength profile. That whiskey seems to complement that very, very well, especially when you add the water and it mellows it out a little bit. It kind of brings more of the sweetness from the wrapper and more of the sweetness from the cigar, and kind of adds that little bit and kind of makes you appreciate that side of it as well. It kind of drowns out that little bit of earthiness and the robustness. So
definitely,
I think they work very, very well. As you said, the cigar, it's the first time I've sampled it, but before the whiskey, it was great. After the whiskey, I think it made it even better, personally.
I feel like it has almost some like baking spice notes to it. Yeah. And it's definitely a very interesting smoke. And it complements very well with the whiskey. Great pairing.
Great all around, But moving on to the fun question now.
Yeah.
I love these questions. So this question, do you want to ask it, actually?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, we usually do this in terms of cigar basis. As I say, most of our guests have been cigar-related guests, but same question, just with a whiskey spin on it. If you were to be able to choose anybody, past, present, whatever, to sample a whiskey with, sit down, try maybe 1, 2, 3, however many whiskeys, and just conversate and go over your experiences, who would them 3 people sort of be? Who would you like to sit down with?
I love this.
It always seems to put people on the
I
spot.
love it.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, but it kind of dives into sort of what you're interested in, I guess.
Okay, good question. I think I would have to say 2 of them will have to be industry people, just because I would love to hear their opinion on things.
Mhm.
So one of them would be Masataka Taketsuru, the father of Japanese whiskey, just because I really appreciate Japanese culture and I love whiskey. And he was definitely a geek. He studied chemistry, and then he studied also whiskey making. So it will be a very interesting experience, I think, to see, what interested him in the whiskey industry and what his thoughts are, and what he liked or disliked. Because I have a book with his notes, and the amount of information on it, it's pretty insane. So yeah, that will definitely be fun.
Yeah, that seems like a good one. And as you say, if he's kind of the sort of, I guess, the pioneer for Japanese whiskey, I guess that's the guy you want to speak to, right? Yeah, good choice. Have you got a second?
Second one will have to be Bessie Williamson. She was the manager and owner of Lafroig during the 20th century. I think she was the first woman to be a manager of a distillery in Scotland in the 20th century. And obviously she just kind of like took care of the distillery during the First World War. And I think it'll be cool to have that interaction with her, to see, women in the industry at the time. And I love whiskey, so, Lafroig as well.
Nice.
It will be interesting to see her experience, like, because I think nowadays you see a lot of women in the industry, but back then it was quite a novelty.
Right.
So it must have been an interesting path to choose.
Yeah, I imagine it brings, well, back then as well, I guess, the challenges she must have faced to kind of be successful and get to where sort of Lafroig is. It'd be quite cool to understand that. And as I say, it's another historical sort of thing, with World War One and the challenges that must have brought as well. It's insane. So, a couple of good choices.
Yeah. What about the last one then?
The last one is going to have to be a boring one. My granddad.
Okay. That's not a boring one.
I was going to say
it's
that.
more normal, I think. He wasn't famous.
No, but I think it's always good to have someone sort of closer to home that you can just sit down and enjoy that time with. I think when we sort of answered this question before, I said my mum's husband. I'd like to sit down and, I see him all the time, but it's one of them things. It's close to home. It's just a little bit more time with somebody, experiences something that you both enjoy. So yeah, definitely not a boring choice at all. 3 good picks.
Thanks.
No problem.
Awesome.
Well, I suppose that kind of wraps the whole thing up. I could sit here and talk whiskey with you all day, I think. As I say, I've learned massive amounts, probably more than I thought I would. But yeah.
We're just going to have to keep looking into it, I think. And then
for sure.
maybe one of our events we'll have to do the whole tasting process with everyone here. And because we always do it with the cigars. But
yeah, of course.
it'll be nice, I think. But thanks so much. It's been such
thanks
a pleasure.
for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
The pleasure's all ours. It's great to have you.
It's always fun to have good whiskey and cigars in good company. So
likewise, it's been great. Thank you very much. And as I say, it's not a short journey for you, so we appreciate you making the journey, the trip down here. I appreciate we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. So.
Next time we'll come up to Liverpool.
Yeah,
definitely.
We'll make the trip instead.
Yeah, we will.
Well, I suppose there's one final question that we always do. This one kind of appeals to all 3 of us. We'll do it for both, I think. We'll do the cigar side and the whiskey side. I think I know everyone's answers based on our descriptions of both earlier. But the question is, is that cigar and is that whiskey for you or is it not for you? So just to clarify, do you enjoy it? Would you pick it up again? Or is it something that you maybe liked in this experience but maybe wouldn't pick up again based on the profile? Lewis, we'll start with you.
Oh, pressure. Fair enough. Of course, cigar for me, 100%. The whiskey, I would say for me, purely because I want to pick it up and try it again. I do. I think I struggle when it comes to whiskey. I really struggle to understand it fully because I get the burn quite a lot and I'm like, okay, well, there's the burn. What else is there? So I really struggle with that. But again, I think I will dive into it a lot more now after today, 100%. And really, it's given me a lot of appreciation today. So thank you for that. So yeah, I'm going to say for me, for the whiskey as well.
Raluca, what about you?
Yeah.
I would have to say for me, on both products, I think the cigar, it's actually very approachable. Even considering it's medium to full strength, it does not feel like overpowering.
Yeah.
And the whiskey, it's just delicious.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. Obviously, we had slightly different cigars, but again, I agree with your points. The cigar, again, the dark appearance of it, the medium to full strength classification of it, you sit there and think, oh, is it one of those ones that's going to kind of knock you back a little bit? But as you said, very, very approachable cigar, very enjoyable cigar. And the whiskey today has been phenomenal. So really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, both for me.
Awesome. What a great podcast it's been.
I've really enjoyed it. Really, really have. As I say, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys as well. Let us know what you think of the subscription this month. The whiskey in question that we had today was the Stella Do cast strength, the Macduff. I would highly...
Not cast strength, it's 54%, but it's high.
Oh,
yeah.
We won't say anything about that, but you can grab it online at C.Gars.com and of course the subscription box too. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and subscribe. And until next time, stay safe and happy and sipping. Peace.